Hey, welcome back to JK Moto Entertainment Channel. Welcome back once again to Stable B, our almost favorite place. As we mentioned in last week's video and many other videos, this is not actually like our favorite place, but we are still here because it's still kind of cold and we're still waiting for race/track season to begin. So tonight we're going to talk about something. I gotta grab a tool. Tire pressure. We're going to talk about tire pressure. That's really about it, honestly. I got told I was spending way too long in the waffle period last week, so we're just gonna jump straight into tire pressure. But before we jump into it, please make sure you click the subscribe button down below and throw a like on the video. And for those of you that are track day junkies, club racers, absolute professionals, Mark Marquez, tire vendors, any of the like that has anything to say about tire pressure throughout this video, anything that I might say that is wrong, or any just extra advice that you have that you can give, please throw that down in the comments down below so that everyone else that comes to this video can get a little bit more than just my personal take on tire pressure. But here to give you a couple quick tips and tricks and how to set yourself up for success and not look like a rookie on your first track day. So let's get into it. All right, so one of the most important things to be like correct on your motorcycle is your tires. If you don't know why, I'm not gonna take too long to explain it, but it should be pretty obvious, right? Everything that you do on your motorcycle is translated to the ground by your tires, right? They are what contact the asphalt, they are what put your go, they're what put your stop to the ground, they're what makes the bike turn because you're leaning the bike over and decreasing the radius of the tire, and there's a whole science behind all of it, but realistically your tires need to be perfect, and the more perfect your tires can be, the better you're going to perform on the racetrack. So one of the things that everyone is like always focused on, and for good reason, is your tire pressures. Now, I meant to grab my book, I'll grab it here in a second, but if you look at owner's manual for your tire, it might actually have it right on the side of the bike here. Yeah, perfect. I don't even need the book, it's right on the side of the bike. You pull up on the side of your Suzuki Gixxer 750 from 2008. Beautiful bike, by the way. If you haven't checked out our video on that, go check it out. It'll be linked up here. Amazing bike. This one, the beauty part, we won't get into that. Don't worry about it. But anyway, I'm gonna read you the tire pressures here. So it says front, you get a Hell 120, 70, 17, 58W. I don't even know what that means. Let me know down in the comments. I do, it's okay. 36 PSI cold, cool. And then the rear, 42 PSI cold. PSI, pounds per square inch. I was just looking up some tire charts that we'll get into here in a second. And they said something about bar, which is like barometric / absolute, maybe. I don't even know. I don't know what bar stands for, but it's measured in stupid numbers in my opinion. So I was kind of curious. I wanted to ask the audience if any of you actually use bar, let me know. Because one, I'm curious how, because you can't get as accurate with it, I feel like. And then two, where do you live that you actually use bar? Here in the US, we use PSI. It's great. Pounds per square inch. Anyway, in my hand here, I have a little tire pressure gauge. In a second, I'll show you what it looks like to check your tire pressure. Now, this is not an expensive tire pressure gauge. In fact, I don't even know if I paid for it. No, it did. Yeah, it did. It came in my toolkit with my air compressor. And I think I have a couple of them, and it is not the most accurate of tire pressure gauges. There's no calibration on it. It's not like $100. It's nothing like that. But it'll still work perfectly fine. So that's what I wanted to get off the bat first, is that you don't need to go buy some crazy, amazing, wild tire pressure gauge. What is important about your tire pressure gauge is that when you set out in the morning and you're either pulling your bike, off the warmers, or looking at it on the warmers, or looking at it cold, or you just came out from your first session and you're finally looking at tire pressure, whatever it might be, whatever gauge you pick up at the beginning of the day is the same gauge that you need to use throughout the rest of the day. The reason for that is that, once again, there are no calibration requirements for these things. They could all be just a little bit off, and you don't want to go thinking that you're at 25 all day, pick up a new gauge that says 27, lower your pressure by 2 pounds, and then be completely thrown off for that session or that race or whatever it might be. So whatever tire pressure gauge you're using at the beginning of the day, stick with that gauge throughout the day. Now, week to week, month to month, track day to track day, it doesn't matter as much, right? It can if you start to build yourself like a table that says like at this tire compound, at this time in tire life, at this pressure, this temperature, and this humidity, and this time in the morning, and the relative track. You build yourself a table that says like I need to be at 32.2 PSI in the front and 92.72 in the rear. I hope it's not 92 because that'd be nuts. If you're one of those people, then you should use the same one all the time. If you're not quite at that level, that's perfectly fine. I would recommend not being at that level, especially in the beginning. You don't need to go that crazy, but you show up and you check your tire pressure in the morning and you get it set somewhere close to where you think it should be. We'll talk more about that in a second. It shouldn't be 3642, but whatever pressure gauge you use that morning, you use the same one all day. So you stay accurate to what you're doing that day. All right, cool. We're gonna set this down now. I don't need it anymore. Now, let's go ahead and get into the 3642 that I have written on the side of the bike here. I'm curious if the, yeah, that sticker got kind of torn off. So we'll go off that one. 36 PSI in the front and 42 in the rear. Story time. Went to my first ever track day and I had never even looked at this sticker on my bike before, and I had had my tires set at about 30 and 30 because I was like, I did some research on a forum real quick, went off what a whole bunch of different people were saying, said, hey, these are the tires that I have. Let's just do a 30-30 and see how it feels. And out on the street, I never noticed a difference. Felt great. Never, I didn't ride that much anyway. It felt fine. I won't say it felt like amazing and that's like the perfect pressure to go with, but it felt fine. So when I showed up to my first track day, I was with a buddy and he's like, hey, let's go get our tire pressures checked. And I was like, sure, okay, whatever. So we head over there and head over to the tire guys. And that's tip number one. If you have questions about tire pressure and you have no idea where to start, just go to your local track day tire vendor. Great place to start. Generally, they know what they're doing and they're like brand loyal, but they're still gonna give you advice even if you're not on their branded tires. They're not just gonna be absolute jerks about it and not tell you anything because like, oh, well, you're on a Dunlop and I only deal with Pirelli, so I have no idea. They're still gonna be able to give you some advice and at least like a place to start if you have absolutely no idea what you're doing. So back to the story, we head in there, I check my tire pressure, I'm 30 front, 30 rear, and he's like, have you done track day before? I said, no. He's like, you know what? Probably a good place to start. Start there, see how you feel, adjust it throughout the day if you want, just check it after you come in and get hot and see where you're at. I said, okay, sounds great. Cool, I didn't have to do anything. Insert buddy comes in, check his tire pressure, 36 in the front. Guy's like, whoa, 36 pounds, you been riding on that? He's like, yeah. He's like, dude, why do you have this thing set at 36 pounds? He's like, well, that's what the owner's manual says to do. So I set it per the owner's manual. I was like, no one does that. No one does that, is what the tire vendor said. And only funny part was my buddy looked at me like, yo, does no one do that? And I was like, well, I mean, I set mine at 30 and 30. I didn't do that. So maybe he's just right that no one does that. But anyway, when he gets to the rear, sees 42 in the rear, and he was like even more crazy. So anyway, moral of the story, don't have your tire pressure set, especially for a track day, at what the recommended pressure from manufacturer is on your bike, or even what it says on the side of the tire, right? The pressures that you see there are not necessarily where you want to be. I said I was at 30 and 30 and the vendor agreed with me. That is generally like if I'm giving advice to someone, I am in no means a tire expert. I'm not a vendor, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a certified mechanic, I'm not any of these crazy things. So I try and keep my advice very like, hey, just being open and honest with you. This is just coming from like my best idea of what you should do, but don't take it to heart. And the same advice I would give you right now in this video, under the same circumstances, is 30 and 30 is an okay place to start. It's not gonna be the best. If you have a friend there that knows more, or you have a vendor to go talk to, or something like that, that is a much better place to start. But if you literally are just showing up on your own, you have no idea what you're doing, and the only thing you've watched prior to your first track day is this video right here, 30 front, 30 rear, you'll be okay. Take it easy, and then adjust your pressure accordingly, depending on how it feels. Now, we gotta get into the adjusting part. All right, so I know I said we were done with this tool. We're not actually quite done with it. We're gonna give a quick, I don't need to do this, but this is a motorcycle, this is a tire, this is a valve stem. You take your cap off, you set your cap somewhere where you won't lose it. I always lose them, it's okay, everyone does, but you need them. You take your tire pressure gauge and you push it against there. And right now we have 15 pounds in this rear tire, which is a little less than ideal, such as life. So that's how you do, that's how you check your pressure. Recently in a video I put out some track day hacks, and it was basically just a list of things you should bring to a track day, or just kind of different things to help you out have a more successful track day. So if you want to check that video out, please go check it out. We'll have it linked up here. But one of the things I didn't mention in that was an air compressor. And an air compressor or some sort of tire inflator is a great tool to have with you for your track day. If you can't bring one because you don't have one or whatever, find a buddy that has one, or as always, you can always go over, if you go to the tire vendor, be like, hey man, I've got 5 pounds in my rear tire. He'll say, sounds good, let's get you some more pressure, and he'll help you out. But if you can bring an air compressor, that's super helpful, and a tire pressure monitor gauge. So we got to talk about adjusting your tire pressure and how to do that and when you should do that and everything else. And tire pressure and tire wear and like, hey man, how's my tire wear look is a huge topic in this sport. And I don't want to dive too deep into it because I'm not an expert by any means. But when you start getting further down the line and a little bit more experienced and a little bit faster, it does make a difference. And you can go from like, I didn't feel anything till I changed 5 PSI to I changed half a pound, and it made the world of difference, right? So you can head there eventually. What I didn't mention in the beginning of the video already was that every single tire brand, I just did a double check on this, we'll pop them up on the screen, but Bridgestone, Michelin, Dunlop, Pirelli, Metzler, all of those guys for their slicks have a recommended tire pressure chart. And so that's something that like I run mostly Dunlops, and so before I ever did my first track day with slicks, I was looking it up. They had this awesome chart, so I just screenshotted that thing, I saved it to my favorites, and when I get to the track, I don't even have to worry about like, oh man, what should my tire pressure be? I don't remember, and then look it up, and I may or may not have cell phone service. I just have it there in my pictures ready to go. I pull it up, and I'm like, okay, cool, hot, rear 26 to 28 or whatever it might be. So I do recommend doing that if you're running slicks and you have that available to you. If not, and you're still on street tires and you don't have anyone and you're like, nope, I'm just purely going off what you're saying here in this video, Easton, you're the guy, I would start with the 30-30. Those numbers are gonna sound a little weird and I might get some comments down on that. So please bring them my way. I wanna hear other people's opinions, and if you guys have a better number, great. It's just the best like kind of safe bet that I've been able to find for easy to remember. Works for almost all brands and all conditions, and it's a great like kind of just baseline to start from. After that, you should come in after you do your first session and check your tire pressure. And then what you're going to check for is, did it go up or did it go down? It should theoretically go up, because as you get more heat in your tire, which you should be getting more heat in the tire from just sitting there to riding around the racetrack, all that friction and movement and everything else is going to put more heat in the tire, and that will make the tire pressure go up. So it should go up. Now, there are times where the road itself, the asphalt, is really cold, especially if you're running warmers and it's real cold in the morning and you're going real slow. You can actually pull some of that pressure out. And that was a tip I got from a tire vendor way back in the day. He's like, hey, it's actually real cold today and the track's a little wet, so they'll go ahead and bump your pressure about 3 pounds higher than you normally would have it hot, because you'll see it come back down, because I guarantee you're not going that fast. And he was right, I wasn't going that fast. But you want to come back in after your first session and very quickly, right? And if you don't do it after your first session, that's fine, because your first ever session at your first ever track day, you're gonna be sitting there wanting to talk to all your buddies and, you know, tell your girlfriend how cool you are and be like, oh my goodness, I think I almost drug my knee, even though it was 2 feet from the ground, and everything else, right? That's fine. You're gonna forget about tire pressure. If you wait till right before you go back out, it's basically useless. Don't worry about it, just go back out. You'll probably be similar to where you were before. You need to grab it fresh while it's still hot. And on a track day when you're not running warmers and it's your first time or second, or you're still relatively slow, sorry, yeah, you probably are, it's very hard to get it actually hot and get that accurate pressure. So as soon as you get in, you get that bike on the kickstand or on a rear stand or whatever, pop that cap off, get that tire pressure, write it down, say, okay, cool, where was it at? Writing it down is not super important, but it's good to write down real quick, just so you can remember. You want to remember where it was. Now, when you go to make your tire pressure adjustment, maybe you don't get to that right away, that is okay. When you make that adjustment, you need to do it by PSI increment, not by final PSI. What I mean is, if you come in, let's say you went out in the morning, you were at 30 and 30, cool. You come in, your rear tire's at 36, and you're like, holy cow, I'm way faster than Easton said, that's way too much. I gotta drop that down to like 32. Or get it back to 30 hot or something like that, right? So you wait around for 45 minutes and you were eating and talking to everyone, and right before you go back out, you're like, oh crap, I gotta drop that down. Now you drop it all the way back down. You might not even be able to get there, or you're like, oh, wow, it's actually only at 33 now. Let me just drop it 1 PSI, I'm good to go. You're gonna come back in and not have that PSI drop that you wanted, right? So it's important to drop by PSI increment and not by total PSI. The best advice, honestly, is just to get off the bike, even if you still have your helmet on, check your tire pressure and adjust from there. And then my next best advice, I was talking to Chris Hamlet, I believe is the guy that was kind of telling us about this. He's a Pirelli guy. down in Texas, and got a lot of advice from him. We filmed the whole JK Moto podcast episode on that, so go check that out with Chris Hamlet. But one of the advices that he gave, because I was like, well, how do you tell someone to start? How do you make an adjustment? How do you do that safely off the back? Do you just make a big jump and see what happens? I think his advice was to start with, you can start with 5 psi. Just be a little careful when you're out there. Maybe start with something more like 2, right, in one direction or the other. Generally, if you're feeling like you're wanting a little more sticky or you're coming back with a really high temperature, you want to go ahead and drop it down by 2 psi. Drop it down by 2. Did I feel a difference? No. I can do 2 again. Did I feel a difference? Yes. Whoa, too much. Okay, now take it back up. Drop it by 1. Did I feel that difference? No. Let's try 1.5, or let's try just a half, or something like that. And you can kind of start to narrow that down. So I'm going to say on your first ever track day, realistically, tire pressure shouldn't be at the top of your mind if you have it set in a reasonable ballpark from the beginning. Now, if you run up there with your street tire pressures, it could be a problem. If you're not at street tire pressures, you're a little bit lower and you're in a decent ballpark, you're going to be okay throughout your entire first track day, unless you're running out there within like 3 seconds of a lap record. So I don't put this video out to scare anyone or to freak anyone out. I just mean that, like, tire pressure is huge. It helps translate your grip to the ground, through the tire to the bike, right? Bike connected to tire, tire connected to ground. In between that is that air pressure makes a huge difference. And it also has to do with tire wear. That's why you see people talk about tire wear all the time, hot tearing, cold tearing, and all those different things can be affected by your tire pressure, because you can get hotter spots in like little individual bands. You can be, anyway, there's a whole science behind it. If you're looking at all of that and you want to spend some time, I'm not going to put out a giant science video on that because I don't have the time, at least not in this video. But your tire pressure is important. You do need to set it correctly before you go out. If you're still doing your first few track days, don't worry about it too much. And that's just my advice. If someone has different advice, please throw it down in the comments. I'm all about it. I want to hear it. But don't worry about it too much. Just make sure you're in the general ballpark. Once you feel like you're comfortable out there, you've got your race lines down, you're able to go around the track at, a relatively comfortable pace for yourself. You're leaning good, you're predictable, you've got all that kind of stuff settled out, you've done a couple track days, you can start to kind of play with that tire pressure a little bit. Once you do, once again, whatever gauge you use in the morning, use the same gauge throughout the day, so that way you're making accurate and similar adjustments all day. Once you start messing with the tire pressure, dropping it by 1 pound or 2 in the beginning is okay. Just understand that changing your tire pressure by a large amount can actually make a decent difference. And so as always, honestly, anytime you go out there, you should have some sort of let me change that. Anytime you go out on track with a change having been made to your bike, period, any change, you should have a little bit of hold, and you should be kind of trying to focus in and see if you can feel that change, right? And that's also going to help you grow and learn faster and a lot better. So if you're out there adjusting tire pressure and you put a big change like 3 or 4, maybe even 5 psi in between one session of the next, be paying attention to that, be ready for it, be ready for that tire to feel a little different, and don't be expecting to just go do all the same things and feel great. If you're only dropping 0.5 psi at a time or adding, it's going to take a lot longer to feel that difference, so you can have a little bit more kind of leniency with it. But that would be my advice. Don't worry about it until you're in a few track days. Once you're there, make sure you use the same gauge. Adjust it 1 pound or 2 at a time, up or down. See what it feels like, right? Because that's why you're out there. You're not out there to win a race that day, so it doesn't matter if you're going a little slower because you just raised your tire pressure to see what happens. Don't go wild with it. Don't add 10 psi and be like, oh, I wonder if it'll blow up in the middle of this corner. No, that's not what I'm saying to do. But go ahead and feel free to kind of play with it up and down a little bit. See what feels good to you. And as you get used to making those adjustments and changes, you'll probably start to fall into the same guidelines that everyone else has been running, because once we all get going the same speed and we're all on the similar tires and at the same temperatures, we're generally all running similar PSIs. And way down the line, that might be something you keep from people because you've got the golden PSI figured out. Got that golden tire pressure for the perfect lap. I'm getting off on a tangent. So that's my advice. I think I said it already. Same tire pressure gauge all day. Set your tire pressure in the morning. If you have no idea where to start and you're too afraid to go talk to the tire guy, 30, 30. 30 front, 30 rear. If you want to go a little crazy, go 31, 29. Sure. Your rear should generally be a little lower than your front. If you want to go an extra step above that and you're running slicks or possibly trackday version tires, go check out the website for a recommended tire pressure for those tires. Use that. Cold is what you're going to be doing unless you're on warmers. That's the only time you use the warm is if you're on warmers. They do also have to be fully warm. That's a keynote too. Sorry to bring it up, but if you're using warmers, you can feel if the air is warm by the inside of the rim right here. So feel if the inside of the rim's warm, that means the air inside is warm. That means you can actually change your tire pressure at that point because it's warm. That's important. And then once you start adjusting tire pressure, once again, if you're not focused on it on your first track day, that's fine. Don't worry about it too much. Just get in the ballpark and be good. But once you start messing with it, once you're comfortable out there, go a PSI or two at a time. Make a decent change. See if you can feel it. See if you like it or you don't. And then make your adjustments from there and dial it in for where you want to be. That's what I have to say about tire pressure. If you have any questions on tire pressures or anything like that, please leave them down in the comments, or as always, you can hit me up on Instagram at JKMoto Entertainment. I'll answer any and all questions there. It might take me a couple days, but I do check that pretty often for messages. Once again, I'm not a tire expert. I always will tell you to please go ask the experts. They're at the track for a reason. They're there to help. Everyone in the paddock is super friendly, even if it's not the tire expert, but it's a dude with a white plate or yellow plate next to you that looks like he's got a couple trophies maybe hanging out. He probably knows what he's doing. Ask a friend. Ask anyone else in the paddock. When you go to tech, that's a great time to bring it up. Say, hey, I don't actually know what my tire pressures are. Sorry. They might give you a little crap in the moment. Don't worry about it too much. We'd much rather you bring it up at tech than go out there on like a 5-pound tire in the rear and expect it to work, or in the front and watch it just buckle underneath you, right? So if you don't have a tire pressure gauge, I do recommend getting one. But yeah, once again, if you have any questions, please let me know. And then for my track day junkies, my club racers, please leave your thoughts and opinions and guidance down in the comments for us also, so we can have that to check on. Appreciate you guys watching today. Stick around for the next video on the channel. You can do that easily by subscribing down below. Hope you learned a thing or two about tire pressures. Thanks. We'll see you guys in the next video.